When it comes to Leica, people seem to fall into two groups. There are those who love the brand and experience of shooting with a Leica and appreciate the history behind it, and then there are those who struggle to see past the price tag, especially when cameras with similar specs from other brands come in at a fraction of the cost. To me, the SL3 perfectly reassembles this in Leica's lineup. On one hand, it aims to offer a unique shooting experience, but on the other, it is also meant to perform as a tool for the demanding photographer. So in this video, I want to answer the question, can the SL3 cater to both sides? But first, some context. I'm a professional photographer and videographer focused on travel and lifestyle. I recently picked up the M11 and got hooked on the whole Leica shooting experience. So naturally, I was curious to see if the SL3 could fit into my professional workflow and even lead me to switch over to Leica entirely. And thanks to the Leica Academy Austria, I was able to borrow the SL3 with the SL24 to 90mm lens for a week and test it out during a recent trip to Copenhagen. To me, the user experience is what sets Leica apart from every other manufacturer. The M11 inspires me to shoot, experiment with new subjects, and I overall enjoy the process more. This keeps me out shooting for longer, and all of this ultimately leads to better photos as well. Not because of the latest specs, but because of the whole experience. And in many ways, the SL3 carries the same magic I found in the M11. It's built with exceptional quality. Every dial and button feels solid, making the camera a pleasure to hold and operate. Its design is simple and elegant, based around 6 programmable function buttons and 3 control wheels, one of which can be clicked. And this philosophy carries on to the menus. They are simple and intuitive to navigate, with many unique features like the perspective control or touchable icons, and overall an impressive attention to detail. And for more professional applications, there are all the important ports, a CF Express and SD card slot, and a top LCD panel. This gets complemented by the articulating screen on the back and the high-resolution viewfinder. All this makes the SL3 not only highly enjoyable to use, but also quick and efficient in the field. The viewfinder especially impressed me, since it's the only one I used so far where I can comfortably see the whole image while wearing my glasses. And I also became a big fan of the right command dial, which is really smooth to operate. And while some users have mentioned slow startup times and playback, I haven't experienced this myself and found the camera fast to operate. And Leica also provides actual weather sealing ratings, which proved to be useful on this trip. I've never had sealing issues on other cameras, but often stow them in my bag or tuck them under my coat when it's raining. With the SL3, however, I felt confident shooting without worry. The build quality, the design, and ease of use really sets the SL3 apart from other camera models. However, I also encountered a few hiccups. While customizing the buttons is easy by long pressing them, I felt the dials were a bit underutilized. The main dial allows you to set aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and exposure compensation, but I found the left dial a bit awkward to use while shooting. So I simply mapped ISO to one of the function buttons instead and didn't use the left dial. Instead, I would love to be able to assign less frequent functions like drive mode, autofocus area, or the Kelvin white balance for video. Also, the right clickable dial is set to change shooting modes, but since I mainly use manual mode anyways, this dial remains mostly unused for me. It would be great to be able to assign other options to it as on the M11. And there are also a few features that are available on the M11 that are missing on the SL3, like closing the shutter when changing lenses to protect the sensor from dust, or little details like displaying the battery percentage. The good thing is that these are software limitations, and Leica is known for listening to user feedback, so I hope they address these points in a future update. One thing firmware may not improve is battery life. Normally this isn't an issue for me, since changing batteries only takes a few seconds, but the SL3's battery life is noticeably poor. I only had one battery for this trip and had to stop for a midday coffee break every day to recharge the camera. But let's finally talk about photography with the Leica SL3. It has a 60 megapixel sensor similar to the one in the M11, which I absolutely love. The high resolution allows for substantial cropping, while noise performance is excellent. I didn't mind shooting at ISOs up to 6400, and the results are more pleasing than the files from my Sony A7CR, which has a comparable resolution. As for color, Leica cameras have a unique rendering that tends towards the warmer, more magenta tones. But in practice, the DNG files work seamlessly with my usual presets. I also enjoyed experimenting with the new Leica looks like Chrome, which quickly became a favorite of mine, and Eternal, which was great for nighttime shots. I would still say the M11 images feel a touch more special, but that's likely due to the lenses. The 24-90mm is a modern lens design with no optical flaws, while M lenses usually have more character. I would have loved to try my Folklander lenses on the SL3, but unfortunately there was no adapter available. What really impressed me was the IBIS in this camera. It is only rated at 5 stops, which is well below the 8 stops offered by competitors. But these numbers usually don't really give you a good indication when it comes to practical applications. While shooting, I found the IBIS to be exceptional. I was able to consistently handhold shutter speeds of half a second, even with longer focal lengths, which made for a very stable platform for night photography. When it comes to the autofocus, the SL3 has a new phase detect autofocus system, but I would say this still is a weakness of the camera compared to the competition, since it can struggle with faster motion or in low light conditions. But for general photography with less unpredictable movement, the autofocus is more than adequate. And I also found it to be very accurate when using subject detection. I understand that the core audience of this camera probably doesn't care much about video, but for me and my work, video is actually an important aspect. So I'm actually filming this part on the SL3 so you get a good impression on the video quality you can expect out of this camera. The SL3 clearly aims to push Leica's video capabilities, and as a result, the camera has many interesting features for video shooters. There's the Cine mode where the camera displays shutter angle and T-stops, a waveform monitor, and various codec options. Plus, it includes handy tools like the floating ISO, which adjusts for variable aperture lenses when in manual mode. And there's also an automatic focus pull function. However, it is to no surprise that the non-stacked 60 megapixel sensor is simply not ideal for video. There's a 1.24 times crop when shooting 8K or any of the 4K formats. But since 4K is oversampled from 8K up to 30 FPS, you actually get a very good and detailed image out of this camera. What I found a bit frustrating is that I still don't really know what the base ISO for L-log is on that camera. In video mode, the SL3 sets a minimum of ISO 200 in log, but as you can see in this clip, even after pulling down the highlights, they remain overexposed, which is a typical sign of shooting below the base ISO. I got better results with ISO 800, but I'm still unsure if this is the actual base ISO of the camera. And I haven't found any solid info in Leica's paper on L-log or anywhere else online. I also had mixed experiences with the autofocus in video mode. For static scenes, the autofocus worked great, but with subject detection, the camera can struggle in certain scenarios. In controlled environments like this one, the camera has no issues in getting consistent focus. But I found when shooting in low light conditions or when the eyes of your subjects are not clearly visible, the camera can hunt for focus, which results in a very distracting background pulsing. So does the SL3 deliver on its promise? Is it a perfect blend between experience and performance? Well, if you primarily are a photographer, then I'd say yes, absolutely. The design, build, and interface of this camera create a unique user experience that encourages you to shoot. And this is a very valuable asset. Combined with exceptional image quality, impressive IBIS, and reliable performance, it's both a tool and an inspiration. But if you, like me, are looking for a hybrid camera, things get a bit tricky. While the video quality is good and the camera has many powerful features, the limitations that come with the high resolution sensor and the sometimes inconsistent autofocus wouldn't let me use the camera comfortably for more sophisticated projects. Which honestly is a bit sad, since I really wanted to like this camera because it ticks all the boxes in so many other categories. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure to let me know down in the comments if you own an SL series camera or are thinking about buying a Leica. See you in the next one.